What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Week 9 edition of the Cash Process. I'm your host, Ben Hostler. I am solo for Week 9. This guy, Anthony, man, I don't know, dude. He's been ducking me on the Sunday morning streams. Claims he's been in 6 weddings in the last 8 weeks. Now he's ducking me on the Cash Process. Claims that he's building a house. I don't know. This guy's MIA. So we're just gonna have to run through the slate solo. Without the I don't really know what to call what he adds to the show. I don't know if there's a proper word for it, but we're just gonna have to to get through it by ourselves. Thank you guys for tuning in. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notifications bell so you know when we post a new video. And you guys can see, as always, have the projections portal up on the screen. If you're watching on YouTube, you can get access to that on the website dfskarma.com/pricing. Also get access to my core plays, who I'm playing every week. AC, Sam, Bales, Matt, everybody, all of our analysts, core plays, premium Discord, projections, final thoughts. My article is paywall now, so you get access to that as well. We can go ahead and dive in. So I want to give you guys that are watching this some homework. If you guys want, in the comments, leave a comment of someone. It can be anybody, any website, whoever your favorite fantasy analyst is, who you would like to see join me on this particular show, the Cash Process. Drop that in the comments. If I don't already personally know them, I can reach out and see if we can get some different guests on here in the future if this type of thing ever happens. So I'm not by myself, but drop that in the comments. We are later in the week. It's Wednesday, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about Week 8, given that it is a day later than we normally put this off. We're on to Week 9. I did squeak out a cash game win on DraftKings despite making some mistakes, I would say. So this is an important part of the review of the week before, in my opinion. Like, you need to be, like, even in a week that you win, you need to judge everything, and I still feel like I made some mistakes. I think once again I overreacted to stuff on Sunday morning, and I actually pivoted off what would have been a really, really good lineup. And it's just unfortunate. I obviously, I feel like I'm good at what I do here, and I hold myself to a high standard. 4-4 in cash games is not a bad start. In position to have a really good season here, if I can string some wins together, but I legitimately feel like I could be 7-1, 8-0. So it's frustrating at the same time. I had a long talk with Matt about it um over the weekend and then after, but yeah, just not overreacting to Sunday news. Certain instances, stuff is very important, and you need to bake that in. You need to see how that causes things to project differently, but he brought up a good point that a lot of the times, if you're moving on to someone on Sunday that you really haven't researched, that's just probably going to be a mistake because me especially, obviously we create content all week, we research all week, but I spend a large portion of my Saturday like in the bunker, like really figuring out where I want to go and what my team is going to be. So when I spend all of that time, like I'm talking hours upon hours, and I end up completely changing things that I felt super confident in on Saturday, like that is probably like not a good sign. And it's happened a couple times. So if you guys have this issue, everyone does. Don't worry about it. We just gotta lock in And we got to move on to the next week. We have a short term memory. I mean, the swap that I made this past week was one of the worst that I think I've ever made. Um, Eli Mitchell, Cooper Kupp, and Michael Pittman to Cordero Patterson, DeAndre Swift, and Keenan Allen. I mean, just like the worst swap that I think I could have made. So unfortunate, but we squeaked the win out, and now we're in position, even 4-4 through 8 weeks. We can put together a really strong season here if we string some wins together. So I'm motivated and ready to dive in. So let's move on to week 9. Another reminder, second time I'm saying it, like the video if you've made it through this 5 minutes of me rambling about how I'm mad at myself. You can like the video. So let's start. I think this like broad view of the slate, since it is a day later than we normally make the video, we have a little bit more clarity on the slate. I'm actually glad that I'm doing this a day later because we got some very, very key news earlier today, which is Aaron Rodgers is going to miss this week's game due to being placed on the reserve list. So this is really big. I think that weeks like this, see, we don't have Anthony on here. Like, Anthony would come on here and he would be like, oh man, this sucks. Dial back. Everyone's gonna play the same team. Blah blah blah. Like it would be really bad. I think he would have like a bad outlook on that. I'm excited. I think you should have a good outlook on it because I think this value, what this does is it just creates a very clear path to the optimal lineup and what you should be playing in cash games. And so what I'll probably do this week is I will dial back my exposure to 50-50s, double ups, stuff like that. And I'm going to up my exposure in head to heads. So I already probably play close to even split between the two, but I'm going to play more. I'm going to skew more towards the head to heads this week because this is a week where when it's clear like this and you know where you should be playing and it's obvious, you should challenge other people to make the right moves, right? Challenge them to not overthink, challenge them to just play the right lineup. And especially in the lower dollar stuff, people will still make mistakes. So up your exposure in head to heads. These are the weeks that people that are in tuned and paying attention and know what they're doing, like they should realistically fare well head to head wise against the more casual players. So I'm probably going to be focusing more heavily on the head to heads this week. So we will dive into QB here. I kind of buried the lead there, but it's obvious for cash games. He's $4,400 on DraftKings. Jordan Love making his first ever NFL start. Looked good in the preseason. Looked very good in the preseason. He was one of the best quarterbacks graded out by Pro Football Focus in terms of adjusted completion percentage and some other metrics in the 2021 preseason. He has rushing ability. It's a good matchup. Now it's on the road, which sucks, but Kansas City has been just a very, very giving defense for the majority of the season, especially fantasy wise. They give up the second most fantasy points per game to quarterbacks, behind only the Washington football team, giving up 23 points per game to quarterbacks. So it's a good matchup. He's cheap. I just don't see a reason to overthink it, and you're going to be plugging him in to your cash game build. We can dive more into the tournament plays at quarterback on tomorrow's video, which is like our NFL DFS DraftKings picks video. Be myself, Bales, Sam. We can dive more into the GPP plays there. I will say, guys that just stick off the page, like to me, automatically, Mahomes, 7,800. I'm still going to be going back to the well on him. I know 2 down games in a row. I'm not going to quit him. I'm going to keep going back to him. Now he's below 8K at home. Really good matchup. Definitely going to be back in on Mahomes. Lamar Jackson at home against Minnesota, 7,300. Too cheap. Certainly going to be interested in him. And I think maybe Josh Allen, obviously the most expensive quarterback, but 8,200 isn't that much. He sticks out as well, but very clear path for tournaments would probably, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on the Jordan Love stuff. Cash, you're plug him in. You don't have to play him in tournaments. Dak is another one, 6,900 at home. Like him at home in the dome. Definitely an exploitable matchup against Denver. So those are some of the guys that stick out to me. You can see on the projections on the screen. I've sorted by ceiling. They're not fully updated. You can see Rodgers is still in there. Sam, we'll update that later today. But Josh Allen, Mahomes, Lamar, Dak, those are the top four guys, literally that I just mentioned. They're the top four in our ceiling projections, and ceiling is exactly what we are looking for in tournaments. So I think those are the guys that jump off the page. We can dive deeper into their matchups and stuff on tomorrow's video. At running back, let me switch over on the screen here to running back. This is going to be a weird week because if you plug in Jordan Love for 4,400, you plug in your cheap defense. There's a tight end that I think you should be playing that's very cheap. You can plug him in. Like, you're going to have a lot of salary to spend. A lot. And there's really no high-priced running backs, right? Like, the highest priced running back we have is Alvin Kamara, but he's only 8,200 on DraftKings. Like, we're accustomed to seeing, you know, a Derrick Henry or a McCaffrey at close to 10K. So there's really like nowhere to super spend up the salary that we're going to have. So what's going to happen, I think, is you're going to be able to build just a super loaded lineup. You're going to be able to fit anyone you want in. Kamara obviously is the top projection. Mark Ingram did definitely have a role in his first game back with the Saints. But 8,200, we're going to have the money to spend. I do think Kamara is the top overall option. McCaffrey, I don't think he's going to be back this week. They did designate him to return from the IR, but I would assume he's going to be more into like next week, maybe the week after that by the time he comes back. So you can see in terms of projections, Dalvin Cook and Austin Eckler are the next two. I think both have decent matchups. Philly is interesting because there have been times this season where they've sat back and allowed opposing teams to run on them. They give up the second most catches to the running back position, so that's obviously something we like when targeting Austin Eckler. So I certainly can see why he's projecting so well at 7,900. Dalvin, I think, is too cheap at 7,700. He didn't do much in that Sunday night game, only 7 DraftKings points, but 18 attempts for 78 yards, 2 targets, didn't catch one, just didn't find the end zone. I'm completely fine if you want to play some Dalvin Cook this week. You have other guys like Mixon, Zeke, in that mid tier as well. So there's going to be a lot of options. I don't think we're not really going to need to drop down for any value this week, right? Like, we're going to have value, we're going to have money to spend. So I don't think you need to mess around with any of these 5K running backs. I think you'll be able to fit in pretty much whoever you want. The one guy I'll bring up is Cordell Patterson. Obviously played him in cash last week with that late news. He's still 6,300. Tough matchup, but I don't think playing Cordell Patterson was one of the mistakes I made. It was more of like moving off Cooper Kupp, something that I talked about all week. People aren't going to play Cooper Kupp. It's obvious. Just put him in. I think that was a mistake that I made. But Cordell Patterson's role was legit. They were kind of running Mike Davis out there for a little bit at the beginning of the game, but he was getting carries. He got just under 20% of the targets. So the role is definitely really good, and I do think he is a good play at 6,300. We could probably just move on to receiver. Let me pull those projections up on the screen. I think this is just a little bit different style of video because we're just not going to need to really dive down like we normally do. Like, there's no value that we're searching for or hope that it opens up. So we can pull up receivers here that are on the screen now. I think one guy that is included in the must plays this week is Tyreek Hill at 7,900. I think this is just a very clear misprice. Saw 18 targets in that Monday night game against the Giants. He has double-digit targets in 4 of his last 5 games. The outlier there being a 9-target game against Tennessee, in which he was a little bit banged up. So I think Tyreek Hill's a must-play. It's very clear that they've been forcing him the ball. The way that teams have been defending Kansas City, it's allowing them to really smother Travis Kelce, and it's kind of causing Mahomes to just not even look towards him at times. Not that I think Travis Kelce is a bad play, because I think he's a good play, but like it just causes like it's very clear like he's kind of been forcing the ball to Tyreek, and it was very evident in that Monday night game against the Giants. So I think the spot for Tyreek's good against these corners for Green Bay. That's a spot we've been attacking. I just think it's too cheap. So I think he's 100% a lock for cash games. If you want to go for the stack with Jordan Love and use Devontae as well, I think you can do that. I think you can use any of these other expensive options, to be honest. Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Steph Diggs, all those guys I think are completely fine plays, and you can see that's reflected in their projections on the screen as well. And I don't know. I mean, we have to include Debo in there as well with how he's been playing. I love the way that they've been using him. Kind of a new role, and he kind of been a new player. So I think it would be tough for me to want to play him in cash over someone like Jefferson or Steph Diggs, but he's definitely in the conversation. But I think Tyreek and Adams are probably the top two, depending on what you think Jordan Love is able to do and whatnot. But I mean, the fact that you're playing Jordan Love, um, you're obviously anticipating that Adams can at least have somewhat of a decent game. Moving down to the mid tier, T. Higgins, I think, sticks out to me once again. Played him last week, 13.7 DraftKings points at 5,200 will certainly play. He also got a little bit unlucky. Caught 4 balls for 97 yards, so he was 3 yards shy of the 3-point bonus, so it easily could have been 17 DraftKings points, and that's without him getting in the end zone again. So he still hasn't scored a touchdown since week 2. Eventually, he's going to find the end zone. They were looking for him in the red zone. Good matchup against the Cleveland secondary. We like to target kind of these bigger body guys against Cleveland. They have a lot of smaller corners. I don't know really if they have anyone that can match up with him, and I also don't know. They struggle to tackle at times as well. So I do think it's a good spot for Chase, but Higgins is just such a value at that price, and I think he's probably the top overall mid tier play for me. Dropping down a little bit further, Hunter Renfrow at 4,800. I mean, I don't really want to come on here and talk about the Henry Ruggs stuff, but I mean, just feel terrible for the families involved there. But with him out of the picture, I mean, he was accounting for a quarter of the Raiders' air yards. So obviously, Renfrow kind of has a valuable role in that offense, anyways. 8 plus targets in 3 of his last 4. You would expect that maybe to rise a little bit, but it's just very clear. Carr trusts him. I think the matchup's good. He's only 4,800, so I think that is a good price point for Renfrow. Let me sort here. As far as like cheaper guys goes this week, I mean, I think Bateman is still interesting at 4K, definitely. And Ayuk is an interesting name. Like, not someone that these are more like GPP plays for me, especially on this slate where we're going to have all this value. But they've been using Brandon Ayuk very heavily in the red zone. And I've always made a note to bake that in um, for tournaments. Like, he does have a legitimate red zone role. And I do think like he's going to have a big game at some point. I mean, if we look at, um, it's just like I just don't see people wanting to play Brandon Ayuk in GPPs with what he's been doing recently. So I think he's a good tournament play, but I think probably the lowest for cash right now that I would go is probably Bateman at 4K. It's a good matchup Obviously involved 6 targets in each of his first 2 NFL games. Um, I feel pretty confident in him at 4K, but I just don't know if you'll need to drop down that low. I think this is, like I said, it's going to be kind of a week where you can play whoever you want, and I think your cash lineup should pretty much come preloaded with Jordan Love, Tyreek Hill, and we can use that as a segue to tight end because I think there's a tight end that they should come preloaded with as well. And it could be a double tight end week with Travis Kelce at 7K. But the guy that I'm talking about is our boy Albert O for Denver. Only 2,600. Noah Fant is on the reserve list. I guess there's always a chance that he comes back for this game, but with how they've been handling those cases this season and needing the double negative test, like whenever these guys get placed on this list, it's kind of been a given that they're missing at least one game. So we can assume Noah Fant out for this game, and Albert O. I mean, this is a athletic specimen that we have liked for upside. Came back last week, caught all 3 of his targets. 6 DraftKings points is good for 2,600 right there, and that's with Noah Fant playing, right? So we can pretty comfortably plug him in, and then Travis Kelce you can see popping for obviously the highest projection overall at the position, but 7K is really really cheap for Travis Kelce. Like this is getting down to the price tier where you can consider him in cash games, and I'm not worried about that bad game against the Giants, right? Like he had a fumble, still saw 7 targets, and he hasn't scored since week 5 against Buffalo, and he's still the highest overall scoring tight end for fantasy on the season. So 7K I think is a value. He's going to project really well as we move on throughout the week. So I think you certainly could plug in Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, especially because you're using Jordan Love on the other side of that game. So I think that game's probably obviously going to be just a huge target overall. But for cash games, double tight end might be in play this week. Outside of Kelce and Alberto, Kyle Pitts. I did not play Kyle Pitts last week. He had a bad game. Only caught 2 of 6 targets. Ryan was looking for him deep a couple times, but I think it is easier for the defense to key in on him when Ridley's off the field. I kind of thought that they were going to do that anyways, and that was before we got that Ridley news. So I think Pitts is going to be like a GPP only target for me for the time being. Mark Andrews at 5,500 I think is too cheap for his role in that offense. So I think he's going to project well. I think he's going to be a pretty good play. Dropping down to the mid tier, nothing really sticks out as must plays for me outside of Alberto. I think like you can go back to the Dan Arnold thing in tournaments if you want. I mean, he scored 14 DraftKings points. He was massively owned last week, and now no one's going to play him because we rewarded Alberto, who I'm assuming is going to be extremely popular. So maybe Dan Arnold in tournaments, although the Bills do typically have pretty good linebacking units, so maybe not the best of matchups. Dallas Goedert at 4,500, I think actually might be my favorite. Hurts really went to him in that game against Detroit. We like to target the middle of the field with how the Chargers have been scheming their defense, and despite having Derwin James, they've actually been pretty bad against tight ends. I think they're bottom 6 in DraftKings points allowed to tight ends. So maybe for tournaments, Dallas Goedert at 4,500 is a good play as well. Overall, I think I covered the positions pretty well. We can finish up here with defense. Obviously, you're going to just look for the cheap defense in cash games. I think for tournaments, Chiefs is a good one at home. I know their defense is bad, but against Jordan Love, everyone will be playing Jordan Love. I think that's just an obvious tournament move, especially if you're not playing Jordan Love. Just plug the Chiefs defense in for cheap. You could sell me on maybe like the Eagles at home. You could sell me on Panthers at home. Maybe sell me on the Texans, but I don't know. We'll see. We'll be plugging in a cheap D this week. Thank you guys very much for watching. Like I said at the beginning of this video, comment below anyone that you would like to see me bring on the cash process in the coming weeks. Like the video, subscribe, head over to the website dfskarma.com, and we'll see you on the next video. Good luck this week, guys.